He's been shot, beaten, betrayed, and hunted, but yet he survived it all. From exposing secrets in the government to crossing paths with the powerful, on today's episode of True Talk, we sit down with Bradley Steyn, the man who lived a real-life spy thriller. Bradley's story is explosive, raw, and something that the history books don't tell you. Buckle up, because Bradley Steyn is on True Talk. Today's episode, Bradley Steyn. What a great guest we have today. A real-life spy and intelligence agent. Great to have you today, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation. I want to touch a bit on your early life. You grew up in Pretoria. Tell us a bit about your background, your family history, how things evolved for you throughout the years.
Thank you very much for having me on, and thank all of you guys that are watching out there. This young man is bright and talented, and
thank you.
I'm pleased that we are distant family friends, but it's so awesome to connect on this platform, and we've been planning to do this for a while. So I'm very impressed with you. Keep at it.
Thank you so much, Brad.
And the message that you're getting out there is very important, and it helps us grow and heal as a country as well. So
thank you for that. Thank you.
I admire what you're doing. Yes, I grew up in Pretoria, other side the Boerewors Gordyn. Other side the Yukskei River, in a place that was called Doringkloof, Verwoerdburg. Today it's called Centurion.
Yeah.
And I was born in the early 70s, so I grew up during the height of apartheid. I went to an English school called Littleton Manor High School because my dad was Afrikaans and my mom was English. And I ended up at the English school, so we always used to get thumped by the Afrikaans schools at rugby, unfortunately, much to my dismise. But
still like that today.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But, growing up in Verwoerdburg during those days was quite interesting, because there were certain people that my mother would check first. Oh yeah, he can go for a braai at their house, or go hang out at their house. They're not super conservative, because my parents were very liberal. My
that
mother
must have
was
been tough.
Yeah, it was interesting because not all the kids are a reflection of their parents. A lot of the time. So it was interesting because, my mom more so did it because, this guy might have been in some sort of government department, and my mother knew everybody who was anybody during those days. She was the head of public relations at the State Theatre in Pretoria. So she was a networker and a connector. So yeah, they were pretty protective of me, making sure that, I had their same values that they had. I grew up Catholic, and in a very traditional Catholic home. And but what was very important to my parents was that everybody gets treated the same way, and they really struggled with the way apartheid was run. And that's why my mother was a member of the Black Sash. I don't know if your generation might not know. Is it's an organization by, I guess today you'd call them liberal left women, that were predominantly white women that went out and in support of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And my good friend Roy Ingle's mother was a member of the Black Sash organization as well, and they were prolific in their day. So growing up in South Africa during the apartheid era was almost like playing tug of war, because at school we went to cadets, and even though I went to an English school, which is seen as a more liberal school, cadets, we were taught about, they'd make us run around and go get that leaf, we'll come back and it's not that leaf, the other leaf. Sien jy die stoffies daar, gat jy? And, but a lot of that stuff was, for instance, I had no idea why we were singing a song that went something like this: why are we running, swapu, swapu? Why are we suffering, swapu, swapu? Who do we hate, swapu, swapu? Sure. But, that's what the guys were singing up in the border during the border wars. So, the cadet culture was built around swart gevaar and rooi gevaar. Black danger and red danger. And the red danger was the communist influence that was coming via support through Russia, for instance, those communist ideals. And during that time, that's when the Cold War had ended between the United States and South Africa. So there was a lot of action happening now for the control of the natural and mineral resources in Africa. And so it was a really fascinating geopolitical security time.
Definitely.
There was a lot of things happening. South Africa was being sanctioned. The Cubans were coming into Angola to try and bomb the South Africans because the CIA was supporting the South Africans.
Yeah. So all of this was probably indoctrinated into you whilst you were at school. But I just want to know, how was the difference or the dynamics in an English school compared to an Afrikaans school in apartheid? Was there much of a difference, or?
I don't know, because I never ever went to an Afrikaans school. Actually, before I went to an English school, I went to a Waldorf school. So, which was an amazing experience. I learned so much, and it helped me to think outside the box. And but I do know that we got caned the same way as the Afrikaans kids got caned. There was a law back then that you weren't allowed to lift your hand higher than your shoulder.
Yes.
Because that was against the law. That would be seen as a GBH, like an assault.
Sure.
And so you'd have to turn like this to get caned. So 6 of the best. And I used to get plenty of jacks at school, I won't lie.
How was your discipline growing up as a child? Were you well behaved, or?
I was a light lammetjie, so I was the last of the batch in the family. I was spoiled. I had 2 incredible sisters that were about, one was 10 years older than me, the other one was 12 years older than me, I think. So, I grew up in this incredible nurturing household where there were a lot of women. And they were very kind and empathetic, and I guess that's where I get a lot of my empathy from. And which has also become a great skill that I've had in life, even in the clandestine world, is to use empathy and kindness. Might be as a decoy, but
sometimes, but that transition though, from being that empathetic, moving over to, you went to the Navy, right?
Correct.
Yes. How was that? That must have been quite an adaptation.
Well, yeah. Before I went to the Navy, unfortunately, I dropped out of school. I didn't finish high school because. So my mother worked at the State Theatre in Pretoria, and I had just finished rugby practice. I got on the train in Littleton, and I caught the train into town, and I used to walk past the taxi rank so I could see the sights and sounds of South Africa. And it was a lot different back then. You know, people, if you were black and you were seen here after dark in South Africa, I saw that as a kid driving home once. My mother screamed, "Stop," while my dad was driving the car, and she made him pull over. And our gardener was getting beat up by a white South African guy.
Yes.
And it was all because he was out after dark. And he was just walking from the cafe to the house. He went to get some cool drink or something. And I just started murring him. And my mother jumped out and she gave this little Afrikaner a slap. And my mother was like, you know that Medea woman, that Tyler Perry version of that big lady, large and that's my mother was a large and in charge lady, and she was very passionate and stood up for justice. But yeah, so South Africa during that time was vastly different to the South Africa that you can see today. It was squared away. There wasn't litter on the streets. There were no potholes. It was run with an iron fist. But a lot of good things, a lot of things that were done right were done right then too. But you can't outweigh the human rights atrocities are obviously outweigh it tremendously. But it doesn't mean that we can correct our wrongs from the past in the future, and that's why I'm so glad you're doing this, because we can learn from these lessons.
No, definitely.
So, unfortunately, I was on my way to go see my mother, and I walked into an active shooter situation, so a massacre, and I was 17, and I was walking across Stratum Square in the capital of Pretoria, and a white guy, must have been a few years older than me, was walking around with a pistol and just shooting at innocent black people. I initially thought he was part of the task force because he had camo fatigues on, and yeah, he was squared away. He knew what he was doing, the way he was.
He just opened fire on the crowd?
Yeah, and, well, he was just walking through the square, hunting black people and just shooting.
Sure. And there was like 8 people that passed away, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I think it was 7, and I think 14 were shot.
And what did you witness that day?
I was actually just hiding behind a little wall, and he was walking through a central garden. It's called the Lillian Nagoya Square in Pretoria now, but back then it was Stratum Square, and it had a big head of President Stratum, massive big brass head, and underneath the Volksgas building.
Sure.
And what ended up happening is he was just finding people along this garden route, and he just started shooting at them. And I was behind a wall, looking over the wall at him, and then somebody went, "Psst, psst, Kleinbaas, come here." And I turned around, and there was a young black man with very kind and warm eyes. I call him Kind Eyes because I never ever knew what his name was. And he said, "Come here, Pisa, come." So I went and I hid behind a wall with them. And as soon as I got behind the wall, other people jumped up and ran away. And the gunman started shooting in our direction. And I remember it hit the bench that we were hiding behind. I still remember as though it was yesterday how the shrapnel, the marble was stinging my legs and the back of my neck. It was terrifying.
Do you get to speak to the shooter?
I just said to him, "Why are you doing this?" And so eventually what ended up happening, this young guy jumped up because we saw this shooter, we later found out his name was Die Witwolf, Barend Hendrik Strydom. And this Kandais jumped up and ran because he saw him shooting a man that was eating a burger or a sandwich or a pie or something. And he shot him, and the man just sort of sat there in disbelief, and he shot him again. And we were looking over the bench, through the bushes, must have been 10 meters away, 15 meters away.
Yes.
And so Kandais jumped up and chased after him. I jumped up, grabbed my rugby kit bag and bolted after him. And as soon as I came around the corner, he shot him twice. And he fell on the ground, and then I was still running towards him, and he must have seen me in his periphery, and he lifted his gun. And then when he saw I was white, he put the gun down.
Sure.
En I said, hoekom doen jy dit? Hoekom skiet jy hierdie mense? En he said, ek doen dit vir die toekoms van wit Suid-Afrikaners. I'm doing this for the future of white South Africans. And that's always haunted me terribly. And maybe that's why I am a little extreme in my own way. But yeah, so
that sparked something in you that, obviously your family fought the good fight. Did you transition that day, or was it just?
Well, my life changed that day because Kandais was now bleeding and I needed to stop the blood. And for years and years and years and years, every time I washed my hands, I would have flashbacks of trying to get the blood out from underneath my fingernails.
Yes.
So I've had to live with silly things like that because, you know, your mind can be incredibly invasive as well if you don't control it. So obviously my life spiraled after that. Mental health, people didn't really know.
You struggle a lot with mental health.
Yes.
Still. Wow.
Yeah. No, I do. But I also have it. It's taken me a long time to figure out how to manage it. And I see the right professionals that I need to see, and I take the right medication I need to take. And I do daily routines that help me manage a quality of life where I'm not a risk to myself, obviously, and I'm not a risk to making poor decisions that affect my family and my friends and my businesses and my reputation and whatever I do. But I also do say it the way it is, you know, because I've had amazing mentors around me that have also stood up and spoken up when they needed to.
Sure.
So that's how I ended up leaving Pretoria and ended up in Cape Town.
Sure. And your time in the Navy, obviously you were part of the Apartheid government, I assume.
Yeah.
That must have been bad. Is that why you transitioned, or what happened throughout the years?
Well, you know, I say I've got help now, but I didn't have that much help back then from a mental health standpoint. And I remember I was actually just down the road here in Simonstown. It's amazing how these things go full circle back. And here in Simonstown, I actually went to Saldanha first and did my basics at SAS Saldanha, because I couldn't finish school. I just got so angry at school. I lashed out. I became incredibly aggressive. And I just welcome the excuse to give somebody a PK, and that's just the person that unfortunately I turned out to be. And before that, But especially like bullies, like schoolyard bullies. Yes, I used to love getting into.
So you were still fighting for
scraps.
justice.
Yeah, but then I ended up coming to the Navy, and I struggled in the Navy because of my mental health, and you know, I'd get incredibly lonely. But I fell in love with the ocean, and I totally see what the octopus whisperer. What's that?
Oh yes,
My octopus keeper.
Yeah, my octopus friend.
That documentary. I totally see what he's drawn by. But through that and through breathing work and meditation, I managed to take control of what was going on, because I thought I'd be in the arts. I thought that I'd be in theatre. My mother was in theatre, but here now I was in the Navy, but I was very unhappy, and my mental health got so bad that I actually attempted suicide.
Sure.
Which was a very, very dark and troubling time, and I realized that I really needed to get help, and that this thing was bigger than me, and because I couldn't process why David Wolf could justify just killing a multitude of different people and feel that was okay. It struggled with me, and it made me angry, and now I wanted to go and kill him.
Sure.
But obviously I knew that I couldn't, because I'd end up in jail. You know, so it's that battle, that constant battle of... So I had a lot of time to self-reflect and figure out different ways to compartmentalize my train of thought and how to stay healthy.
Yeah, that must have been bad. So obviously working through all of that, so many people talk about the cure for depression, the cure for that. I don't know, I'm lucky enough never to be in that position to struggle mentally. I think men go through battles, they definitely do. And not everyone is depressed though. They have depressing situations, but not many people go through such severe things. But what I have seen is people being set free by Christ, and that's, wow. I don't know if you tried it, you've had encounter with Jesus, yes, but it's something I would definitely recommend. On that topic now, one of your best friends, Neil De Beer, who we mourn his loss, and his family's loss. He passed away recently, one of Bradley's best friends. Just tell us a bit more about your memories, because I met him in church, and he told me how Christ saved him, and how essentially he was set free of so much of that. So how did you guys meet? Because both of you were in the Apartheid government, and you're fighting for justice, and you turn around and...
Yeah, well, initially, and we were involved with the Apartheid government, and that was because I had met Neil. Neil was up in Longabon. He was doing, I think, logistics support for the Recce regiment up there in Longabon, and he met a guy there called Andy Miller, and Andy Miller was doing a joint operation with the security police, which basically was the sharp end of the stick of the apartheid government during those days. Andy Miller befriended Neil. When Neil ended up leaving the reconnaissance regiment, Andy Miller recruited Neil and gave him a substantial amount of money to go and set up a proxy for a intelligence cover unit, and that was a security company called Project Group. And in essence, what we did is we did security at venues and bars and nightclubs. And because, you know, a lot of the time the soldiers, the military guys would come into town and they'd drink and loose lips sink ships. And Neil and I have spoken about this on many occasions in other interviews that we've done, about, you know, the dynamics of that time, because during that time there was a big fight on the streets of Cape Town for power. And we ended up meeting a guy called Cyril Beaker. Cyril Beaker is a well-known and infamous figure back in those days, and Cyril was a coloured guy from the Cape Flats. He had dogs, and but he also had access to people on the fringes of the radicals, which were the ANC branch at that stage, specifically in Bonteheuwel and Athlone. And what we ended up doing was getting into, well, Neil ended up recruiting me. I was the only person that he recruited from Project Group.
Sure.
To help him. And obviously, you know, that little voice in your head, you wake up in the morning and you go and brush your teeth and am I going to make good decisions today or am I going to make bad decisions today? You look at yourself, and I was still at that stage where I didn't understand what was right and what was wrong, because of the trauma that I'd witnessed during the massacre, and now coming to terms with, was that potentially normal or wasn't it?
Yeah.
So as a young man, this was a good place for me to express myself through violence. And it's not something that I'm very proud of all the time, but it also is part of my DNA of who I've later become in life. So I think it's important from that context to say that. And, you know, and what a incredible human being and complicated human being Neil was at the same time, because, you know, we'd be asked or tasked to go and do something, but then to make ourselves feel better, we'd go and do good stuff as well. So, you know, whether it be us going to high schools and taking the crew with us with our big bomber jackets and all these big heavy guys to the high schools and go speak to the high school students on Fridays and say, no to drugs, kids. So it, and we'd also speak to them about personal safety. We'd speak to the kids and girls about, because they started using roofies at that time, date rape drugs, and basic self-defense, hand-to-hand combat. We'd talk to people about also giving them security tips about what to do when you pull up to a four-way stop, leave some space between yourself and cars in front of you so you don't get hijacked. We used to do a bunch of stuff like that, which I thought, if only they knew what we were doing.
So what exactly were you guys doing behind the scenes?
Well, you know, we were doing a lot of the dirty work for the National Party government at that stage. So Major Andy Miller was the head of the security police in the Western Cape. So his purview was to action what Dr. Barnard, who was the head of national intelligence in South Africa at the time, needed. And so that's what Neil and I would go do. So if there were guys that were starting to flip, meaning going to the other side, we'd have to go grab them, we'd have to take them to the major, they'd get locked up,
Sure.
whatever the case may be.
You'd be part of the intimidation, interrogation
Yeah.
group. Okay.
I'd come up with the operational plan, Neil and the major would sign off on it,
Sure.
or vice versa. But you know, Neil's done lots of interviews where he says I was the door kicker.
Yeah.
And sometimes he also helped because the door wasn't locked.
Sure.
And we just needed to check the handle. But Neil was and that's when I saw the leadership potential that he had in him and the fire that he brought and the inspirational qualities that he had even back then. But our journey obviously had to take a different path, and in a very clever way, these two guys, Jeremy Very and Andre Lincoln, with Stephen Khumalo, who were high-ranking ANC MK operatives within the Department of Intelligence and Security, came up with a plan to recruit Neil and I. So we got recruited
Whilst you were working for the apartheid government.
while we were working for the apartheid government because of the foundation of one document, and that was the Freedom Charter. And it said in our Freedom Charter, because we knew that things couldn't continue the way they were continuing. I knew that what we were doing was wrong. But I didn't do this out of feeling guilty about it. I just did it because I knew that I had to break what I was doing and do the complete opposite to that to make up for anything that I could have done. So that's why it was such a radical switch for us.
So you were a double agent.
So we became double agents.
And how did they not find out? Well, they obviously eventually found out, but...
Because, you know, Neil and I both have charismatic personalities. I've always been the guy in the background, the quieter one, the more subdued one. I actually didn't even want to write a book. But later on, when I found out how even Neil was getting scapegoated within the ANC, how he was getting sabotaged at the NEC elections. But Lincoln and Very, because of intelligence that we had passed to them, they were getting sabotaged within our own organization. And, you know, at the end of the day, I was a member of the ANC for almost 30 years, or more than 30 years, sorry, like 35 years.
And when did that membership stop?
Well, when I cut my card up about 3.5...
I remember seeing that.
3.5 years ago, I cut my card up in complete disgust and disbelief when somebody in the ANC told me there's no place for Mlungu in the
Who told
ANC.
you that?
A very high-ranking member of Mr. Ramaphosa's cabinet.
Wow, in private, he told you that. That's really bad. I know we're jumping the gun now and we are obviously talking about a lot of topics, but the ANC has failed South Africa. But you've met Nelson Mandela, right? What do you think he would have said about this and this ANC?
Well, I actually want to take a step back, talking about Neil and I. You talk about meeting Nelson Mandela. That had a profound impact on us both, because that was a leader. That man just, his aura, his personality, who he was, demanded respect. It wasn't an intimidation thing, it was just who this man was.
So what we see on camera is actually who he was behind the scenes as well.
He was a remarkable man. But before we talk about him, I just want to mention the name Chris Hani, because that's where history has been distorted in our country. And I just want to encourage your viewers to also have a look at who was around during those days. And the very same people that are around today were around back then. So a lot of the secret deals and negotiations that were done behind closed doors. And the chief negotiator was Cyril Ramaphosa during those days.
Sure.
And look where we are today. So, Cyril Ramaphosa is not a combatant. He's not like us. He's not a fighter, a warrior. He's a bureaucrat. And how he squandered the reputation of the ANC, and how he has squandered the resources of our country, and how he has not led our country with no backbone is very, very disappointing to myself and a lot of the veterans out there. And we know things are changing. There's a massive change at the moment. There's this ANC's ship is taking on a lot of water. And, it's a crucial time in our history, because your generation is going to start stepping up. And I'm quite excited about that. I'm quite excited about your generation stepping up, because, we've needed to get a generation to be bitter, the young kids that would sit on the Magogo's lap and hear the stories of how poorly people were treated in this country. That kid had to live through that. Now that kid's probably my age. So that's passing through that generation. Now this new generation is where there's going to be a lot of hope for our country. And that's why I'm so excited about young guys and our youth today, because we see these kids go to these go watch them play rugby, go watch them in their academic environment. It's completely different. That's why I say the good and the bad in apartheid, you can't weigh it out, because our country from a non-racial point of view is in a lot better state today with this new generation carrying on. Even though there's a lot of politicians that still talk a lot of hate and rhetoric, etc., because it's what fuels their popularity.
Yeah. So the ANC's hanging on.
And, and people like this chaff fake MK party, this, how to have the audacity to take the name of the military movement of the ANC, it's audacious. But we all know who the Askaris and all know who the Mpimpis are. We all know who these bad people are.
Jacob Zuma, tell me about him, his role in the apartheid government. Was he a double agent?
Yes.
Tell them that. What?
So he was on a list. So one of the things that we were instructed to do by General Lincoln and General Vieri, well, they weren't generals then, but our commanders. Later on, they became generals in the South African police. But what they instructed us to do was to go through Miller's drawers and his filing cabinet and see if we could find anything. And we hit the jackpot. We hit a list, and that was the list of assets. Assets meaning double agents of the state, of the apartheid government.
Sure.
And
so he was essentially working...
Msholozi's name was on there, Jacob Zuma's name was on there.
So he was working with the apartheid government and the ANC. So Jacob Zuma essentially betrayed South Africa.
Absolutely.
On numerous occasions, including this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think many people know that. That's fascinating.
Well, a lot of people do know that, but a lot of people just prefer to turn a blind eye to him because of his stature. And in South African culture, somebody with stature like that, an older Zulu man, is revered and respected in the African culture, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, if you're twee gat jakkals, you're twee gat jakkals.
Yeah.
And if you're a bad person, you're a bad person. And that's one of the reasons why our country is in the state it is today, is because of people like Jacob Msholozi Zuma, and because he sold us out. He sold the liberation movement out. He sold Chris Hani out. You were asking me about Nelson Mandela earlier. And I'd mentioned Chris Hani's name. So Andre Lincoln worked very closely with Chris Hani, and we got to meet Chris Hani. And the reason we got to meet Chris Hani is because they knew that there was a list of targets. And they knew that, and Chris Hani was the commander of Umkhonto we Sizwe. And this is the last year that Umkhonto we Sizwe was officially around. So when we spoke to Chris, he told us there's a list, not only of Askaris and double agents, but he told us about the list that was found with Janus Valus, ultimately. Sure. And Madiba's name was on that list.
So they wanted to assassinate Nelson Mandela as well?
Yeah.
And you put a stop to that?
Andre Lincoln, we did, collectively. Yeah. We ended up doing that because... So one of our tasks was... There was a guy in Cape Town, a very well-known security company in Cape Town in Sea Point called Sea Point Security, and it was run by a guy called Hans de Leeuw. And Hans de Leeuw, right at near Saunders Beach, you know, the traffic circle at the end of Sea Point, Hans de Leeuw had a security company there with a guy that was with him called Keith Conway. Now Keith Conway was the head of the Eyster Brigade, which was the Iron Guard for the AWB, but also part of the training commando of the Iron Guard. But he was also involved with WAM, World Apartheid Movement. Lincoln and Vieri and Stephen Khumalo, one of our operations involved infiltrating their farm that they had near Zeerust. And while we were at that farm, we discovered that there was a desk that was being carved and custom grooves put in it where barrels are being put into it, where stocks are being put into it, where you can hide things. And they were components of a 50 caliber sniper rifle.
Sure.
And that's why you have a look, if you look at any of the inauguration footage of Nelson Mandela, you'll see that bulletproof glass.
Yes.
That's unheard of.
You're talking about assassination. So they tried assassinating Nelson Mandela, and you guys put a stop to that.
Yeah, well, the intel that we put forward, and some of the intel that we got from a prison, somebody in a prison, that led to Andre Lincoln thwarting the assassination of Nelson Mandela and Jeremy Vieri. And Neil. Yeah, all of us.
So, have you been shot at before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah,
I got a hole just here in my bicep from a 7.65 from my AK-47 that ended up hitting the door frame of a car, but it missed my heart by a centimeter.
Sure.
Yeah. And I remember Neil and I were in a taxi, and we were looking after the head of, this is a different story, looking after the head of SAPTA, South African Black Taxi Association, during the taxi war. And Codeta was being sponsored by the ANC. South African Black Taxi Association was being sponsored by the National Party government, and they had just assassinated Codeta's head of their union. So they tried to kill our guy, Billy Daniels. Later on, we got to the situation, we got to the Golden Acre Mall, underneath the bridge.
In Cape Town.
In Cape Town. And this taxi pulled up on us and just started shooting at us with an AK-47. And all we had were 9mm. I've never been so scared in my life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying.
And just narrowly missing your heart.
And Neil was sitting in the front seat. He jumped over, and he was a big boy back then. He was like a world-class judo champion at that. He was a big boy. Sure. And he flew back into the back. We got out the back, hid behind the engine block, and we were returning fire. Neil was shooting under the car, trying to shoot them in the legs. I was trying to shoot around that way. Billy Daniels was over here. He had pissed his pants. He was squealing, trying to run away. But as soon as he'd run away, they'd nail him. They would have probably shot him. So I had my knee in the small of his back, holding onto his belt like this and trying to shoot. And it was scary.
Wow. So you've obviously been through those encounters and some bad encounters. We saw Charlie Kirk being assassinated last night.
Yeah.
I know whether you agree with him politically or not, it's horrific. They tried assassinating Donald Trump. It's not the way to go, is it?
Well, ultimately, it's not the way to go because, generally these people get turned into martyrs when they shouldn't be turned into martyrs. But at the end of the day, there's taking a person's life is there's no reason for it, I understand in the judicial system there's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and I believe, for instance, in this country, we should bring back the death penalty.
I agree.
Because our country has changed so much since our constitution was written and drafted. So we need to catch up with it. But the Charlie Kirk assassination is
it's very sad.
It's a blatant acts of aggression against a democracy, which is freedom to be able to speak.
You know, on that topic, Brad, you've lived in the United States. What happened in that Black Lives Matter protest? If you can give us a quick rundown. I know we're running out of time now, but tell us about that. You know, you've been involved in the justice fight, but something bad happened to you that day.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I don't like bullies. And, you know, when I switched on the television, I saw a black man saying, "I can't breathe." And there's a policeman who can hear him, who doesn't want to remove his knee. And he's killing him in front of the whole world to see. I got triggered by that, and I got angry. You know, I still remember somebody made a comment to me, and they said to me, "Why aren't you doing anything about George Floyd getting killed in the States? You're just concerned about South Africa and what's going on in South Africa, and you're not concerned about what's going on in the country that you've been living in for all these years." And I just thought the dynamics trying to justify which tragedy is worse in this country or not is a reach. But my family and I were going to go. We made "I Can't Breathe" posters. My daughter was 8 at the time. And we were going to go to the protest, a peaceful protest, and to march against police brutality. And what we ended up seeing was the police sparking the violence and instigating the violence. Now, I understand, you know, there was, I think his name's Cedric Sampson, Cedric. He was one of the Black Lives Matter organizers, and he was on the front of the skirmish line, and they just turned around and they started beating the hell out of him. And like I said, we were there marching against police brutality. And I saw a sergeant. I've tried to find the highest ranking police officer on that skirmish line. I found him. I said, "Sarge, please take control of your men.
Yeah.
This is excessive." Obviously, it was chaos and pandemonium, but they were just beating the hell out of people, and I got triggered. Straight up, I got triggered, and I saw them beating a woman, and then afterwards they beat this man with a Nipsey Hussle t-shirt on and a hat. And they just started beating the hell out of him, and I just lunged forward and I kicked the police officer.
Sure.
To try and get him off that person that he was beating. And in retaliation to my kick, they ended up shooting me, but unfortunately I got hit in the genitalia. So I got hit in the testicles with a rubber bullet, and it ended up shattering my left testicle, and I lost 15% of it.
Sure.
I had emergency surgery, and yeah, it's a ball ache.
How was that pain?
Oh,
yeah,
terrible.
I know. Just hitting a man in the pins already is enough. I can imagine being shot in the pins.
No, I don't recommend that. Don't do that.
So what happened then? Did you just go to the hospital? Did they?
I went to the hospital. Neil de Beer, my brother, was the first one out there saying, "What the hell is wrong with you guys?" Yeah. No, it was tough.
I can imagine, but the United States seems so polarized. It is polarized, obviously. Democrats versus Republicans. It's not how it should be. People should disagree respectfully.
Exactly.
And I feel in South Africa, it is still possible to disagree respectfully, but it doesn't look like it can be done in the United States.
Yeah.
And last night is a great example thereof.
Exactly.
It's I don't know, how can you compare living in the United States to South Africa? So many South Africans have this idealistic picture of how the United States is or how it ought to be.
Yeah.
And living abroad is amazing, or it's portrayed to be amazing. But
no, well, I have very much the same views a lot of young South Africans do. I was watching Back to the Future and E.T. and all these cool movies, and I was shaped by the A-Team and Knight Rider and Kevin Costner's Bodyguard. That's why I became a bodyguard, and then I ended up becoming good friends with Kevin and working for him.
Sure.
But it's a great place. Well, under this current administration, I'll say it straight up. Although I did vote for him in the first election, but I voted for him on what he's doing today. But he should have started that in his first term, but not as radical as what he's doing today. Because what I think he's doing today is encroaching on people's human rights in a very vulgar way. There's a fine balance between being a securocrat and holding the bar for human rights and what's right and what's wrong. But it can be done, but I think what he's doing, if that was being done in South Africa, I'd say perfect. Perfect. If the extent of what I almost wish we could carbon copy what's going on in the United States and do that here, because that's exactly what we need today in South Africa. We need that hardcore look at our borders that are so porous, that our citizens aren't getting healthcare treatment, and Operation Duduzela has to go and police clinics and make sure foreign nationals aren't getting medical care before our people. Buildings are getting like Kenny Kunani and Gayton McKenzie. That's how they started their legacy, by kicking by going OG gangster and kicking guys out of buildings that have been occupied.
Because our government's not doing it.
Because our government's not doing that. The Eastern Cape, the majority of the buildings that are owned by government in the Eastern Cape are now being run by a South Xhosa gang called Boko Haram. And they've taken all those buildings, they're renting them out, and they're taking the money.
I thought Boko Haram was a foreign...
No, it is it is a foreign militant terrorist group, but these Xhosa guys in the Eastern Cape thought they'd call their gang Boko Haram. Yeah.
Well, gang names in South Africa are quite funny. You've got the Americans.
Yeah. Well, that's who...
Sexy boys.
That's who shot at Neil and I were the young Americans when we ended up having to leave this country.
Sure.
Yeah. So after we thwarted the assassination plot, Major Andy Miller figured out that it was Neil and I, and they sent a taxi after us with full of young Americans, and they tried to shoot us.
That's crazy.
I write about it in the book. It's in the book, but Neil and I survived.
By the way, I would really highly recommend Riley's book. Great read.
Thank you.
We'll put the link in the YouTube
that'd
video.
be amazing. Thank you so much.
When you went to the States, right?
Yeah.
After that, met your wife there, I assume.
Yes.
That's very cool. Where did Neil go though?
Neil ended up, actually we both went to the UK first. Neil bounced up to Scotland and I stayed in London. I started working for a South African, a guy that owns Aquarius in Clifton.
Oh, okay, wow.
That that big house in Clifton. He's a Iranian, Jewish, British businessman.
That's quite a combo.
Well, yeah, his parents used to work for the Shah of Iran, and he owns half of Westminster. The guy's got a property portfolio that's massive. I worked for them and doing executive protection, and Neil ended up going to Scotland, and then we went separate ways for many years. I ended up in the States. Actually, I came back to South Africa for a little bit, and then I ended up in the States working with Johnny Cochran, who was O.J. Simpson's lawyer, and a variety of different. And that's when I started my executive protection work. And I've been fortunate. I've worked for a lot of the biggest names.
Yeah, tell us a bit about
Hollywood.
Some big ones.
Yeah, well, the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. I worked for them for many years. I think I've worked for them on and off for almost 28 years.
Sure.
And I'm still very close to the family. They are very dear to me. A lot of my clients I still have good relationships with. I've worked for them. I've worked for anyone from Julia Roberts to Eddie Murphy to Seal to Sting to the Versace's. Right after Gianni Versace was assassinated, I got hired the next day.
Wow.
I moved into the house the next day after they assassinated Gianni Versace. Yeah, I was actually living in Miami at the time.
How's the dynamics in those houses?
It's
The wealth's probably...
There's a lot of money, there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of opulence, and yeah, that's actually when I met the Trump family. That's when I met Donald Trump.
So you've met Donald Trump?
Yeah. No,
and how was your experience with him?
A few times actually. I got on with his second wife best.
Oh yeah.
Ivana. But yeah, she was a very nice lady. She always used to make sure that, because at the end of the day we help. We are support staff. So, but she'd always make sure I got fed and had a drink, or had coffee or something. She's always incredibly kind. But I ended up working for a theme restaurant group called the Fashion Cafe. They were like Planet Hollywood, but with all the supermodels. So I'd travel all over the world with Claudia Schiffer and Al McPherson and Naomi Campbell, and go to Manila and open up these theme restaurants, and there'd be hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get at these supermodels. And actually the guy that started that company, his name was Tommaso Butti. Him and Trump were very good friends, and we spent quite a bit of time with Trump. That guy ended up ripping one of his investors off, ripped him off, I think it was $20 million.
Sure.
And they were the Benetton family, United Colors of Benetton.
Yeah.
They were the Benetton family, stole all their money, and when the FBI came knocking on the door, they called Trump, and Trump said, just get to Peterborough, the private airport outside New York. My plane's there, I'll get you out of here. And I remember they had duffel bags. I had duffel bags full of US dollars.
Wow.
Cash. In the black SUV on the way to Peterborough. And they left me a Andy Warhol picture. It was worth about $200,000.
Sure.
So That was my payment.
So-
He said, if you can sell it, you can have it. We can't fit it. It won't fit on the G5. The thing was massive. Like I said, I wrote a book about, and my publisher convinced me to use the word spies because, you know, clandestine people don't talk about spy stuff. But I always knew I had a story to tell, and I always knew there was a book. But like I said, when I saw these guys getting pushed in front of the bus, Andre Lincoln, you know, was sidelined by the South African police for many, many years. And that's because he knew too much. Jeremy Very, same thing. They blew whistles on CR17. CR17 was when the office of Cyril Ramaphosa used an illegal piece of intelligence gear called a Stingray or grabber to steal all the information at the National Convention where him or Mrs. Zuma, Dr. Zuma, were up for election to become president. So Cyril Ramaphosa used a spy tech gear with Mchunu, Senzo Mchunu, sorry, who's in the press at the moment, who's being paid, but he's suspended, our Minister of Police. He was running that with our National Police Commissioner at the time, Sithole. And he legally stole the NEC convention at CR17. My guys blew the whistle on this, and what ends up happening, Andre ends up getting pushed under the bus, saying that he's corrupt. Jeremy Very did the same thing. No, he's corrupt. And that's why Neil ended up going off and starting the United Independent Movement, because he just couldn't deal with all this BS.
It's horrible. Brad, our time is running out. First of all, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing all of this information. There will definitely have to be a part 2 because time is running out now. Before we draw to an end, I just want your opinion on who do you think would be the suitable political party to run South Africa? Who do we vote for as young people?
Well, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I'm going to just say that, you know, you guys must open your eyes and you must see who's making the right decisions in this country. And you must see who's actually putting their money where their mouth is and getting stuff done. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see who's doing that. You know, so, but at the end of the day, you have to get out and vote, and you have to get out and stay politically active. Even in your smallest way, in the community, in your own community, within your own social network of people. Get out there and make a difference, because, you know, we can. We really, really can. And the sooner we can get this ANC government out of the way, the better, so that our country can blossom into the potential that it has. Because look at the people we have in this country are amazing. Amazing. Look at our sports, look at everything, look at our business, look at...
That's great.
Yeah, we have an incredible amount of potential in this country.
Brad, thank you so much.
Pleasure,
Appreciate it, my brother.
Of course.